welcome to entertainment last week. I just flew in from MTG Chicago, and boy are my bat wings tired. But more importantly, we got a chance to see the Magic Art The Goats, hosted by Vorthos Mike, Sam from Rhystic Studies, and with TD Arts, Tatiana Dykes, and Tina Sak. And we got to film it. My first guy was Cashmere. But we didn't know that we could record it beforehand, so cameraman literally had the camera in his lap, sitting next to me, gorilla style. Well, whether it's a goats or gorillas, you shouldn't be too hard on yourself. I mean, everything you do is good, especially a channel with no budget or subscribers. Thank you. Do you have one of those patrons? They could send you money through that. Yes, we have one of those. Or you could do an OnlyFans. There's probably a little bit you could make there. The internet is a sad and desperate place. Let's just go to the panel. Yay, goats!
We'll do a little intro for everybody here. I'm Vorthos Mike. My real name is Mike Littman, in case you've ever seen me on Facebook and things. I work with art, as an art director years and years and years ago. Magic art show curation things are generally spearheaded by me. A ton of other art things in my history, and with me, we wanted to talk about this topic. We need experts. We're not talking about what we feel is your favorite card, the card you should be cutting in your commander deck, but you like the art. That isn't the discussion today. The topic is what is objectively the best. What would a museum want to add to their permanent collection? What are the pieces, when you see them, people are like, yeah, that's good. Unequivocally, no matter if you've only seen Bob Ross, you have an art history degree, you can say, yeah, that's good art. And the genesis of this idea is where we as art folks, when we get cocktails together, when we get lunch together, this is what we argue about. Especially when new things come out in each set. We pick our favorites and yell at each other and are forced to defend them. From that nugget in MagicCon Minneapolis, we did a very small gathering. Sam was there, and we printed out sheets of cards, and there were about 8 pages worth. And at the end of it, you had to justify your picks in front of our small community of close-knit people. And we said, why don't other people get to see this? Maybe people would enjoy hearing about that. So we pitched it to, Reed Rock. Magic's like, yeah, of course, we would love it. Please, please, please. So gathered squads. He was in the area. Again, I'm Mike. Next to me.
Sure. My name is Tatiana. I am the owner of TD Art. I have. Am I doing like a full introduction?
Yeah, of course.
I have been working in art since I was about 19. So for a long time. And I've been working in the comic and gaming community for just as long. I've been playing Magic off and on since Alpha. I was a child, not that old, when it first came out. Yeah, I've been on the jury for the AluxCon show. I juried the Infected by Art book this year. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. And this was an impossible task, finding these pieces, and you'll learn a little bit more as we talk through it, but I'm happy that you're all here today.
Tina.
I'm Tina Sak. I'm probably the most vanilla of all these guys. I don't. I run a business. I'm just an art collector. My husband and I have played Magic since Alpha, Beta. We were not children, so. And we've collected Magic just about that long. We went, everybody was around then. Wizards of the Coast did a caravan tour with our artists right before Ice Age, right during Ice Age. So my husband and I went out and did that, and that's where we met like Quentin Hoover, Liz Danforth, Harold Neal. Richard King Ferguson was supposed to show, but didn't happen. So ever since that, we've really been collectors. We started with prints because, of course, we were broke. And we've moved on to other originals mostly now. But yeah.
All right. Yeah, my name's Sam. I run a YouTube channel called Rhystic Studies, and I've been doing that for 10 years. I've known Mike just as long, and Mike is the reason that I'm here and why I care so much about Magic art. So this is a full circle moment for me because I've looked up to Mike forever, and everything I know started with his articles. So of course it's an honor. We've become friends over the years, but like Mike said, the best part about being really passionate about Magic art is you get to have chats like this. As Tatiana mentioned, this is an impossible question, and it's more of a question than an answer. We're going to provide some examples, but like any good topic of discourse, like this can be perpetual, and everyone will bring their own personal bias and experience to the table. We have 30 years of Magic Arts, and in that time, certain slivers of that history will mean more to certain people than others, right? I came in 10, 15 years ago. I wasn't around for that first and second and third wave of Magic, so I don't have the sensibilities as much as folks who grew up looking at those cards and daydreaming about Shiv and Dragon and Sarah Angel. So getting to speak with folks who are around for the beginning and the middle years of Magic is always a delight for me. The topic itself, like I said, is one that's inevitably personal. I worked in academia for a long time, and it felt like this unwritten rule in academia that you weren't allowed to just say that you're doing what you're doing because you like it. That was kind of like off limits. You always had to justify it in a million other ways. But it's like, at the end of the day, we're doing what, we're choosing some of these pieces because we like them. And that's good. That's part of your roundabout of criticism. So I want to, kind of premise it with that this is also inviting you to entertain the question itself. We're not going to provide answers, it's just ideas.
So with that in mind, Sam, begin your journey of deprogramming yourself to think of where this panel will head us.
Yeah.
So this little goofy note is an internal Wizards discussion. And this comes from a discussion I was having with Mark Winters, a former art director, about players loving good cards and thereby signing those cards, thereby loving those cards, and the art goes along with it. It is entirely true, but we do want to look at how has this changed over time. So when you first started playing, you would buy a booster pack and look at every card, soak up every card. You were forced to look at every card because, well, Scryfall wasn't around back then, which you'll see a little bit of Scryfall in everything. Search search for artists. You're one of us. And back then, you would see the great art on commons. You would see the whole set. Nowadays, you're looking, where does this fit into my deck? How do I make changes to it? You may look at the commons quickly in a draft, but it's faster, so we're missing it. And that is just the nature of a more mature game. And there's just no way around for us to see that. So we do encourage, once the full set comes out, to slowly go through each common, slowly zoom in on each art. And Scryfall has been wonderful for that, where you can look at the high-res art right away on each set, and they get it lightning quick. Delightful folks there. And for everyone here, we have a little giveaway at the end that we'll be talking about that soon. So, to kick off, let's actually get into the art. That sounds about right. First up, we have Magic Man Sam.
So I'd like to be forthcoming about my criteria. If you were to ask what is the greatest Magic art ever, you have to kind of set the parameters. That's the methodology, as it were. My methodology for assessing this question, the first is technical, just pure technical ability. I think that's important when you have these types of discussions. It speaks to what Mike was speaking about earlier about just objective quality. That technical ability requires a little bit of the know-how of how art is made, but that's a criteria that I think has to be part of this discussion. So, the pieces that I chose, I wanted to hit all 5 boxes if I could, but maybe it's only 4 out of 5. So I think technical ability matters. The second that you could judge this question and kind of assess this question is iconicity. The power that it has to represent the game is part of the charge that Magic art has. So the longer you play Magic, the more sort of ethereal quality a painting might possess. And if you've ever seen a Magic painting in person, you know that objects have tremendous power. It's way different than seeing it on a Magic card or on Scryfall, right? So I'm thinking about cards that might be representative of the game. If you're around the Black Lotus painting, it means something that it's that painting, okay? So, and paintings have those powers. But again, it's not the ultimate criteria. You can't just choose the most iconic paintings because maybe they aren't technically good. So, that's always a discretion. That points to Mike's, little bit of a tongue-in-cheek joke. Like, all right, like Tarmogoyf represents the game, but maybe it's not a technically good painting, okay? And those are the types of conversations that we have behind the scenes. It's like, all right, well, you're almost there, but look at the painting a little longer, you might see something, okay? So there's the technical qualities to it. I also care about legibility. I care about what it looks like at the size of a postage stamp. That's about as much, surface area that magic artists have to work with. And they are obviously cognizant of that. They have to be able to be legible at thumbnail size. And then the fourth, of course, is personal bias. So those are my metrics. Inevitably, like I spoke about a second ago, some of the paintings I chose, I just like them, right? And I get to say that, like, I just like this painting, I'm so sorry. Maybe it doesn't hit all the boxes, but personal bias has me picking this card, okay? So here's Daring Archaeologist from Siddharth Chaturvedi. It came from Dominaria. And I chose this painting to kick us off because this is a great example of highly legible, beautiful tonal balance. The light, which is what Mike is way better at this than I am about understanding the light source in a painting. He taught me how to see this, and I'm still not so good. But Mike zoomed in on a couple elements of this painting where light is caressed in a perfect way. Around the orb that's hanging off, dangling off. Composition-wise, colors are perfect. Composition-wise, this strikes me because the card is called Daring Archaeologist. You can feel the suspension of this piece hanging by the literal fingertips. The fingertips, if you zoom in, this is a Siddharth is so good at legibility because the two hands are rendered in different detail. What that does to us is it draws the eye to what is rendered in higher detail, and it pushes us away from the hand that isn't rendered in high detail. And the hand that's rendered in high detail is gripping into this tiny crack and crevice in the rocks. So it suggests that this archaeologist, the daring archaeologist, is really hanging by a thread, right? It's at risk. So it has this charge, it has this energy. And the other hand is not rendered at all. And those are the details that, again, the painter is thinking about. So they're trying to create a narrative. And the suspense in this painting is perfect. And it's not one that checks the iconicity box. Maybe you haven't thought about this painting since it was printed. Maybe you scanned over it. It was a rare card, so at least for the art paradigm, it checks that box, right? At least it's rare. But yeah, if you rotate this 90 degrees in any direction, it loses a little bit of that energy because it needs to read vertically. This is one of those. It's a perfect example of a painting you don't think about, but is so solid. It is technically perfect. Next up is Mox Amber. Now, this is now growing. It's becoming more iconic. This is by Stephen Belladin. This is a really calm piece. This is a piece that doesn't yell at you. It doesn't say, "Oh, this is a high fantasy magical object." What it does is invites you to consider its power, and it fills in this gap. Like, you can fill in the imagination of what this stone might represent. Take a look at the detailing in the leather. That is so meticulous. It reads as leather immediately. The chain reads as, a silver chain immediately. The stone has, speaking to light again, it refracts and reflects perfectly. All the textures are absolutely perfect. They're meticulous, and this is a good example of Belladin just going way too hard on something that probably didn't need it, right? That's his go-to. He just makes his life hell for himself because he cares so much, right? Speaking of light, it might be overlooked. It's amazing when art details are invisible. Think about how the light balances against the shadows here. There's a lot of shadows, and to create shadow, you have to render different colors. He's working in oils. So to sell the shadows, you lose so much of the detail, but you have to balance it and make it still legible. So to do all the textures right in two different light sources with this perfectly geometric spiral for an object that is not yelling at you that this is high fantasy. This could hang in any museum, and it's not, you don't think about Magic the Gathering immediately. And the final detail I'll speak to is, he had the opportunity to cite Volkenwagen here. You go back to the sketches. That is the, let's say, that's just the not the cookie cutter, but that's the composition that people think of with Moxen. If you've seen Volkenwagens for the vintage versions on Magic Online, it's the hands holding the Mox, and immediately you think, oh, that's Mox. But Belladin chose to do his own composition here, and it stands alone. it stands alone because of that. So this is an immaculate piece. It hooked me the second I saw it. Every time I see it, I'm like charged with that wonder again. I'm like, gosh, this is beautiful. It's beautiful, and it's inviting, and again, technically perfect, okay? Next up is, speaking of Vulcan Baga, I chose Vulcan Baga. I think a lot of these paintings are like icebergs to other works from the similar artists that are kind of in communication with one another. This is an artist that studied under Donato, John Pala, and they're working in a sort of neoclassical style. This painting is similar to Belladin. There's so many layers of detail here, and it reads like the neoclassical portraits of significant figures, you know, the high clergy or the aristocrats, if you've seen paintings from, you know, I guess in a museum, right? So he's playing off of that style in terms of composition. We have a million layers of detail. You don't need to do this on a magic card. It almost breaks one of my rules of like, it's legible, but like no one's ever gonna see the tiny sketches in the sketchbook in the back. A detail I love here is just the rendering of the metal on the cabinets, like the cabinet handles, okay? That's just handled perfectly. And at the end of the day, we have this figure who is in a pose that is evocative of the, you know, the job or the role he is assuming. So again, we could speak forever about Vulcan, but I love this because it's a window into a conversation of a style of magic arts that isn't the only style, right? Not everyone is working in this neoclassical way, but Vulcan is so studied. He studied under Donato, but he also studied the masters, and this is him citing the masters that he studied. So there's a lot to be said there, but you know, we have limited time. Fourth up is a personal favorite. This is a card that enraptured me as a kid before I knew how to play Magic the Gathering. This is Kev Walker. Kev paints really small. If you've ever seen a painting, it's relatively small. He's a king of clarity. One of his trademarks is this misty background. The figure in the foreground is rendered perfectly. It isn't again, it's not a card maybe you think about. It doesn't really represent magic, but it creates this, I don't know, it has this tremendous aura about it. It's rare that we get to see a sort of robot golem of sorts on metal wings that are, you know, clinking in the wind. This painting, I think, it goes a lot unnoticed. It's a bit lost to time. It speaks to Kev Walker's youth because he's, I think, the most prolific magic artist in the game's history. I just like this painting, sorry. I had to slip one in that I just like, right? And number 5 for me is Ashiok, Nightmare Weaver. This is Carla Ortiz. It's a digital painting. It's a vertical composition. This dead man floating pose, I think, is, I guess we can start by saying that this is the first time we saw Ashiok. And Carla only did 19 cards for Magic before she was swept up and started working for Marvel because she was just too good. Like, oh gosh, all right, awesome, you did it. You just like, you passed go, collected $200, and now you're done with Magic. There's a couple of details here. The first is, again, we saw Ashiok for the first time here. I don't think it's ever been done just as well. I think it's perfect. The entire character, the characterization of this figure is in every detail. Ashiok is floating in this swirling, sort of nightmarish cloud, hovering basically. What I love about this painting is the face of Ashiok, compositionally, suggests with the smoke and the negative space behind the smoke that there is a complete face there. But then on second glance, or on third glance, it took me 5 or 6 times to notice, like, oh my gosh, we're missing most of the face. I think that's an important detail to this character because it adds to that mystic quality to the character. And I think, personally speaking, if you want to do Ashiok, you do it this way. You suggest the absence of the face instead of making it explicit, because I think it adds to that nightmarish quality of the character. But yeah, Carla is amazing. Her work is meticulous and wonderful, but not so busy. You know, there's not a million details here. And this is like the last thing I'll say is the Nightmare Weaver. You know, what a great card name. This card name creates this feedback loop with the art. That is a Nightmare Weaver. You go back to the card name, that's Ashiok, Nightmare Weaver, you know, and you're hooked in this hypnotizing loop. So Again, these are my 5 best. I chose these very quickly. One of Mike's mottos is do it live. You gotta do it live. So I was like, all right, I'll choose these. We could go on forever, but those are my choices.
Well done, Sam. Can't really argue about any of these not being great offers.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have.
Yeah. I'm actually going to cheat a little bit and piggyback on what Sam was just talking about. Ashiok's been my favorite planeswalker since they came out more than 10 years ago. And there's a piece I really wanted to put in here, but I couldn't because it's not technically a card. And it's, if any of you read the Magic comic, it's the Ashiok cover that Eric Gist did a couple years ago. And I am lucky enough to own that cover, and it shows Ashiok from like a side profile. And it made me think about what you were saying, because in part of the ethereal part of the top of their head is a wisp of an eye, like in that smoke, which I didn't notice until I actually owned the artwork. And it was just one of those things that I also thought was incredible, because there's nothing there, but it was just this little bit of an eye, which I just found really amazing. But here nor there. Okay, so jumping into, this has been my favorite Magic art for 10 years. So this is Waste Not by Matt Stewart. This is not art that a lot of people think about necessarily when they think about great Magic art, but to jump on some of the things that Sam was talking about with the criteria, two of the other things that I looked at were how well does the art illustrate what the card does. And then I also have a couple pieces I picked for historical qualities that they brought to the game. So this art was done for any of you who were playing and part of the community at that time. It was a fan-driven piece. So the fans got to choose, hey, we want this card that does this thing, and then Matt did some sketches, and then people got to vote on which ones they liked the best. I'm actually lucky enough to own the sketches. I bought them from another artist several years ago. There's 3 different sketches. Matt still owns the original painting. He brought it to one of the shows that Mike did, was that 5 or 6 years ago, I think?
15 years ago, 87 years ago.
87 years ago, it was 2019. And I was lucky enough to take a photo with it. So seeing it in person really brought all that to life for me. Why do I like this piece? You all probably know what the card does. You've either been lucky enough to play it or unlucky enough to play against it. And I love the quality of our character here. First of all, you don't notice until you really look closely the creepy eye. Creepy eye. Which is like somebody just now saw it, right? That's one of the coolest parts. Because you don't notice it right away. It's like Sam was saying, you look at it and you look at it again. And then I love this piece because every time you look at it, there's more. And Matt does this amazing job of really popping the figure to the front of the piece and then blurring it back. But within that popped figure, there's so much detail. So it really brings home what this card does for you as a player. And you get that hint there that there's that kind of that zombie connection, right, with holding the skull. And then if you look at the skulls there in that little waist pouch, so there's just this collector quality of it, which also brings to mind the fact that this card does three different things depending on the discard. So I always really liked that there's all these different pieces there that help to illustrate what's going on with the card. I also absolutely love the palette. Matt does an amazing job of, if you look at the actual painting, it's not like this card's all black, right? It's not super dark when you look at just the physical quality of it, but he does an amazing job of using purples, of really layering in things to create this effect. And I'm a huge light source person. Light source is what tends to draw me to art. And we have multiple light sources in this piece. First of all, you have the hand in front, right, with the light coming out, which really helps to draw your attention to the front of the piece and give you that depth. And then we have kind of this background lighting a little bit, that mistiness. but then also we have the lighting coming from the skulls and the bag in the background, which really helps to draw your eye across the figure. So Matt does an excellent job of getting you to look at all the different things in the art that he wants you to see. So, we all love Steve Belladin.
I think you just won. Gosh, everyone's just like, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, all right. You're going to see Belladin a lot today. I hope Steve knows how much we love him. Art collectors have loved Steve for a long time because Steve does not know how to not go art.
Please tell him.
Yes, please tell him. One of the things about magic art is, like I said, I've been working in this industry for a long time, is it's under what we call production art, right? You're given this job to create this art that's going to go on this card at this thumbnail size and be printed. So as long as you're meeting that criteria, the kind of detail or some of the levels of quality are not really necessary to the process of what it is that they're hired to do. Steve could have put in half the amount of work, and he would have gotten paid the exact same amount of money. So that's just an interesting point for when we're talking about best art. Every artist has to balance those things with their different assignments. How much time they have, how much money they're getting paid, right? You're getting paid a flat amount. If you spend twice as much, you're getting paid half hourly than you would. And for any of you who know how much they get paid for magic art, they have to really balance their time out in order to make sure that they are keeping up with the amount of work that they want to take, while also putting in the level of quality that is comfortable for them for those pieces. So I just wanted to kind of put that in perspective as well. So another big thing with this piece of art is this also, I think it hits that historical quality. Like for those of us who've been playing for a long time, we all remember surgical extraction. And this was one of those pieces that not just do you hate playing against it, but I promise not all my cards are black. I could have picked 5 black cards, but I didn't. But this is one of those pieces that even the untrained eye, anyone playing Magic went, ooh, this art is cool. Because this reduces really well, and it is just it's the most obvious without being on the nose, if that makes sense. So you have this almost has like a fine art quality to it, right? You could walk into a gallery and see this on the wall and go, wow, this is like, I don't know what this means, but it must mean something pretty cool. So you can see it just reads really well, but in the full piece, he does such a great job of grounding the figure, and you really get this kind of wasteland, like there's nothing right out there. You get that little bit of lighting on that thin horizon line there, and that really helps. Just that little bit helps to really pop that figure forward with that sky. The moon's just starting to come out a little bit. All of those things are very intentional to really draw your eye to this figure. And I love the, speaking of what Steve does with adding in shadow, and when you were talking about Mox Amber, I think about that part right in front of our figure, right in the very foreground, and how well that really helps to not just, obviously the shadow technically has to be there, but it really gives you the weight of this character. It really makes it feel heavier, and really juxtaposes the character, which is really driven into the ground, and our spine and skull, which are floating above them. So it really separates them, even though like half the piece is up here and doesn't have the figure in it. It really helps to separate the character and the spine and skull piece, just with that little bit of extra shadow in there. So you're going to see a lot of the same artists today because they're really good. So so this is Vulcan Vaga again. This is Elspeth, Knight Errant. And the reason I chose this one is because I was talking to some of my other art collector friends, and there was this kind of mutual feeling that this was kind of the beginning of an age in magic art for this super high level of quality, and really going like above and beyond. And for us starting to expect Planeswalkers to really be like super killer amazing art in every set. And to call back to some of the things Sam said, we definitely have a lot of those neoclassical components here. And then I love the, absolutely love the ethereal feel of that flow in her outfit there, right? But the rest of her is so solid and so stoic, but you just have this kind of flowing around her, and it really, I think, helps to accentuate the character, right? Elspeth is strong and hard, but also soft. And so it gives you that balance in that character. And so you can see, you know, some of the other, like what we ended up with versus that was like one of the
No, this is a secret layer.
yeah, oh, that's what this is the secret. Like having that, but if you look at the secret layer, also represents that softness in a way that's completely different from the original painting, which is really cool to see because it's the same card. Like, how do you paint the same card and capture all of the exact same things in a completely different way? And I think that's incredibly well illustrated when you compare the secret layer to the original. Can you go back to the full painting again? One of the other things that I absolutely love about this piece is the, oh, and you had to zoom in too, right, in the background. And so there's this really great, Vulcan does a really great job in the composition of the piece to ensure that you see that as well. So really drawing your eye. So again, it gives you that flow and that shape, and he does a great job of making sure you see the whole figure, but then you're also seeing that background piece. So it's, I absolutely love the way he laid the piece out, and I think it really, really helps to illustrate the character in a way that really helps to kind of launch an age of magic art that we all really, really love. Okay, so this was a hard one, because I absolutely love Ryan's art, and this is not my personal favorite, but I felt that it was technically the best, which was hard because Ryan has a lot of history with magic. He does a lot of paintings. I'm pretty sure that Ryan uses a time turner to enable him to have the time to get all these done, because we know they take a really long time. So this is another great example of art that people without a technical eye still very much went, ooh, that's nice art. Ryan went so hard on a card that people will not remember. But again, Ryan's one of those artists that he never does anything halfway. Everything's always incredibly well done. This piece went up to auction and went bonkers, which we were all really, really happy to see, because the art, it didn't matter what the card did or what the card was. The art's incredible. Again, this is another piece where I really like the lighting. We have a couple different lighting sources here. It's an incredibly unique angle. We just have this direct top down. You don't see that very often unless it's, you know, a dead body or something. And so this art is the opposite of a dead body. So it's, the thing about this art is this, again, could be, you know, in a museum. It 100% meets what you would see on Kamigawa, and that's highlighted. You can't see it as well up there, but in the back of the little boat, you see like the colors there, right? That's what really tells you, like, this is Kamigawa. It's not just a boat, you know, that's out in a fisherman out in Vietnam or something. And then, but then everything else about it, if you just take it away some of those little pieces, the little neon highlights, it's just this gorgeous scene that's incredibly well rendered. Another thing we look at as art collectors is it couch friendly? The i.e. will my wife let me buy this question. Tina and I are very lucky we don't have that problem. But that's, I mean, it is a thing that the art collectors do have to consider. And this is something you'd be happy to have anybody come over to your house to come and look at. But I absolutely love our figure. Even though you don't see a face, you really only see, kind of glimpses of the legs, the tabi that they're wearing, and the outfit. You can tell this is one of our Kamigawa resins just based on the color choices. You have some of those like oranges and greens and the pinks again there. And just the back of that boat just has that little bit of a magic, ethereal feeling. So how do you show that we're on Kamigawa and this is a little bit magical while making it feel completely pedestrian? And Ryan just does an incredible job of that. I also absolutely love the way that he rendered all of our creatures here, all of our stingrays, and how we have the one in the front, right? It really has that glowy, magical feeling to it. And that's what helps to give more depth. And I think that that piece really helps to tell the story of what the card does. So, yeah, incredibly jealous of the collector who got this piece. And also knowing how Ryan works and being lucky enough to own one of his pieces. The way he captures this in a way that reads incredibly well in a card is amazing, because when you see his paintings, you would think that, can you go to the zoom in shot? So if you see that right panel, you would think that every little bit would be super completely super clean line detail, but it's not. He does an amazing job at portraying all of these shadows. If you look at our stingray here, how many different colors and different layers and everything that he has in there to portray that depth. So he has a completely different way of portraying depth and detail than Vulcan does, and they're both completely genius in completely different ways. All right, so, there is another black card. Okay, so this wasn't what I was originally going to choose for Rebecca. I don't need to tell you all this is Bitter Blossom. I was originally going to choose Elvish Piper. Elvish Piper. And I just decided that they were both just as technically good, but this was more iconic, which is why I chose it. The thing that I absolutely love about this piece, it reminds me a little bit of like what Matt did, which is this is a black card, but it's not all black, but in a completely different way than Matt's was, right? So Rebecca does this amazing job with that really feminine quality to her artwork. If you think about, I mean, we were blessed with Rebecca doing so many pieces of magic art over quite a long period of time, and you can really pick any of them, and they're amazing. But this really brings that feminine fairy quality in a way that is I think it's that kind of iconic fairy, like, my brain is completely, I'm trying to think of an artist who does all this,
It's the visual shorthand of the purples and the pinks.
yeah, no, I'm trying to think of another artist who does this kind of work, and I might remember in a minute, but I absolutely love how she gives you this depth in the piece. So you have our character in the forefront, and then you have the character in the back, and they're both just as well represented, but you can really see that depth of difference just in the different shades of the purples and the pinks. And so Rebecca uses purples on a black card just like Matt did, but in a very different way. So it shows depth, and it also shows kind of that darkness in the forefront, while still giving this really nice, that nice feminine, ethereal type of quality to the piece. And I also think it also helps to represent what the card does as well. So when you're looking at the character in the back, I think that really helps to represent, like, okay, this is your token you're going to be getting. I also love how Rebecca did the hair and the character in the front. Like, it almost feels like it works its way into some of the foliage that's in the forefront of the piece. And this is a piece that I think really well represents what Sam was talking about, was, does this shrink well onto card size? And it really does. So this is another one of those pieces that, even to the untrained eye, go, oh, that's really nice art. This is really cool artwork. So I think that Rebecca always does an amazing job with her placement and her characters, but I think this helps to really represent a composition that's a little bit more complicated, where we have more than one kind of main character on the card, and how do you represent that in a way that makes sense, that people can read well. And I think she does an excellent job here, again, showing you where the eyes go. And the last thing I wanted to talk about on this piece, can you go back to the closer shot, is again the lighting. So in order to make sure that you can see this character on the front, so this character's face is turned just a little bit to the left, and that allows some of the lighting from the back side of the piece from on the other side of that foliage to hit their face to give you that high point on the right cheekbone, so that that face really pops. Because if it wasn't like that, if the whole character was shaded in the tone that's kind of more on the shoulders and chest, that character would be completely lost. And so one of the big challenges that magic artists have with, they're essentially given like, oh, here's what we think the name of the card's going to be, and here's what it's going to do, and it's going to be a creature, or it's going to be enchantment. Those things matter too, right? So, and we're going to want to see X, Y, and Z on that card. And so one of the puzzles that artists have to put together is, how do I take all of the things my art director wants me to put on this card and put it on there in a way that makes sense visually and is also eye-catching and pleasing, right? So getting all of those pieces together is important for great art, and that puzzle can be really, really challenging, especially on a card like this where it's not a creature, but the thing is it makes creatures. So how do you portray that in a card in a way that makes sense but won't be confused for being a creature card, but also won't be confused for being like a sorcery and instant. This is, to me, it shows that this is a static type of card, right? Like this is going to happen every turn, and I think she does an incredibly good job of exhibiting that in the artwork, so that you really have a feel for the type of card this is going to be.
Kind of goes back to when I started playing, what drew me into the game. A lot of it was movers art. So this is very iconic, I think, for most people who have played for a long time or even know anything about a game. It's been around for forever. It's been used for a lot of things. It was also a lot of the players at the time, it was their first peek at something that was classified as Art Nouveau, right? So nobody knew what that was. A lot of people who played Magic then, they knew what D&D was, they knew what a monster looked like, they knew that kind of stuff. This kind of art was new to them. Also, kind of like what Tatiana said about what information they get from a card. If you ever looked at any of the old cards, they don't always go together. What the card does with actually what the art shows. Like there's a lot of things that fly that don't really fly. This one is very, it's easy to see, right? Oh, this is going to have a copy effect. So I think he nailed it with this one. My husband would say regen is better. We have this conversation a lot. So
Should have been on the panel, Jason.
we talked about that too. So next is Malthus Squad.
You're gonna have to fight me on this one. Like, I need to know why this one's here. Come on now, Tina.
Because it's Matt, and Matt can do no wrong.
Okay. All right, Tina.
So I like this one. This is one of Matt's, and to be fair, we own a lot of Matt Stewart pieces in our house. We have a couple of private commissions. This is one of the first ones that I had seen him do for a published piece that was more than one character. So I do think it kind of expanded his exposure into Magic, showing other things that he could do. And I also feel like this also is, so it's got the lantern, which was the clues or whatever. It's very good. And you can see, I think you can see the interrogation happening real easy here. So I think the storytelling is amazing that's happening. Like, look at the intenseness on those faces. Like, I wouldn't lie to those people. They're gonna beat the crap out of me. So, yeah, this is, also to be fair, I don't think this is his best piece, but I think it's representative of a lot of different things in his work. I mean, he does amazing things in his detail. This is Sublime Epiphany. This one, talk I'm not going to talk about light source because I think everybody knows where the light sources are in this one. But I think this is a very good blue card in that it is very cerebral in its imagery. In the card itself, there's like four or five things you have to choose from. How many is it? Five things you have to choose from. So if you look at all the different layers in her head, as it were, right? And all the things flying out of her head, you can tell all the choices that whoever's casting this is going to have to make. So I think it's a very good representation of blue.
Yeah.
Okay, so Foul Orchard is a Mark Cool piece. Also an alpha artist, right? This is very different from his alpha work. So what Mark did for a while after Magic had kind of calmed down a little bit for him is he had started working on some more personal pieces and some more gallery pieces. We ran into him at Spectrum and we purchased some of those gallery pieces. This was, I think, one of his first forays back into Magic. And it is very representative of his gallery pieces as well as Magic. And that's really what kind of drew us in. And because you can kind of see on the, I don't know, do you have a close-up of the?
That's as big as I could get without it getting blurry.
Okay. The statues, the faces on the statues, if you look at them really closely, they remind me a lot of his early alpha work, you know, like the, oh my God. So it's kind of, to me, it's like a look forward and a look back at the same time of what he was doing. And so that's why I like this piece. Has he done much better stuff since then? Probably, but I do think, kind of like you were talking about, Sam, what's just like the tip of the iceberg? I think this is a good tip of the iceberg for him, getting back into Magic. So again, Steve Belladin, right? This is one that we own, full disclosure. This is one of my favorite pieces of his. I think if anybody went to the Ravnica talk that they had yesterday, where they talked about the power of the guild and that kind of stuff, you can easily see, sorry, you can see that he's Izzet, right? You can see the sigil or symbol right on his shoulder. It's very front and center. You can see the red and the blue in his attire. You can see the charged symbols, everything that's charged, and I'm a huge, I like motion in a lot of pieces, and you can see it in the background of the leaves of the, what I would call spell books, but I don't know if they're spells or not, I'm just guessing. And so, I really like the intense look. So a lot of Izzet players, you think it's just burn and counter, counter, burn, counter, burn, but you gotta pay attention so that you know when you should burn and when you should counter.
There are other spells.
Slow down.
There are, but that's, so I think this is a very good representation of the Ravnica stuff that they were talking about yesterday.
Totally agree.
So I think that's my thought.
Well, I just wanted to add on that one. I think what you're saying too is even though he's sitting completely still, there's this like very electric quality, right? Like you can feel what's going on in his head, right? It's very cool.
Yeah, and there's lots of light.
The last thing I'll say about this is often I think about how paintings can transcend the medium and create a synesthetic quality. This painting is breathing. You can feel the wind coming through the window, pushing the papers around. You know what those papers sound like. It's all there. And you know exactly how tense he is, contrasting what is more or less an easy Sunday afternoon. Okay? And that is the stress of the role that he's playing. So a lot of those paintings that we've seen today have those synesthetic qualities to them. And he can choose to not make the paintings or the papers rustle in the background, but he did. And because of that, the painting breathes. It makes me want to take a breath.
All right, I'm up last. I know time isn't of the essence.
You got to close. This is a relay race.
Well, it's opposite. I used to run first in the 4x400 because I like to lead off, but you know, I want to be mindful of time. If I got to go short, I'll go short. That's fine.
Let's go.
So before I get into mine, I'm not giving you a preview early. You've heard a lot of terminology from us today: rendering and aesthetic qualities. Like These are terms that take time to learn, and we understand that when you go to a museum and reading a label, it's a language you have to learn, and that is part of the inaccessibility of a lot of museums. And when you visit them as a kid, often you remember getting told to stop talking, not enjoy it, love it, touch it, lick it. It's stop talking. So those initial thoughts are what we have to break. And as Magic players, we have a physical representation of a card in an artwork. It speeds up retention. That's why art is there. Otherwise, it would just be Uno. So, for us to re-engage art as adults, you need to visit 18th, 19th century part of museums and look at the landscapes. And you're going to be like, that's a taiga, that's a taiga, that's a taiga, that's a taiga. It's really, really fun. I encourage you to do it. So I may wonder, okay, so what am I looking for here? First, I'm looking for technicality here. Where's the light source? Did they do it right? You start to learn where they do it wrong. Is the color intended? Is the color correct? If you use black in a piece, that means you didn't use the correct purple. It's too strong, it's too stark. How is the perspective? Is it correct? We're in Ravnica right now at Murders at Karlov Manor, and are they all done right? And you'll notice when one's wrong. Is that done right? Are there symbols in there that make sense? So any of you that know Muslim or Christian iconographic elements, if it's a dove, that means something. And magic artists can do that. Are they integrating those things in? Are they using real life? Are they using magic symbols? Or are they using both? Are they mixing them? They're allowed to do that. I look into where's the darkest dark? Where's the lightest light? Is the paint rendered thick? Do they let the shadow of the paint rendered thick be a shadow on the card? And you see that when you see the painting. Somebody's going to ask him for a JPEG. Additionally, I ask, it's the Sandy Koufax question. Was it good at the time, but not good now? Should they be in the Hall of Fame now or only then? And there's pieces of that sort that they were great at that time, but haven't held up longer term. And not because of artists' shenanigans, just because they haven't. There's maybe been a better one made, and people play that version instead. We'll get to it. I follow as it, if I explain it to someone, will folks disagree with me? Or will they nod and be like, yeah, that's good. That's good right away. If you get a pause, it may not be the best. Furthermore, I ask, what does it say? Every magic card is an illustration, as Tatiana mentioned, production art. It needs to serve a purpose. That's why they do it. That's what often ties the fine art world and the illustration world. This is made for a purpose. Fine art, it's does it have a soul or not? What is the artist's intentionality or not? That is what makes something art. When someone says, what is art? Someone decided it is art. Marcel Duchamp did that with the spinning wheel. He put a urinal on a pedestal, and they're like, well, that's terrible. It's like, no, he decided it's art, thus it is art. And illustration doesn't get to do that. But the magic artist that can transcend that to say something as well is the capital A art that we're looking for. Additionally, I want to say, do I feel something? And what do I feel? Is it a sad piece? Do I feel sadness? Or am I giggling about something that I'm not supposed to? Because that's the artist's intentionality, that I got the visual language and you get the higher level that they were actually telling you, which is fun. Okay, might as well jump in right away. I had to put it in, and not to retread everything.
I feel like you've seen this piece.
You've seen this piece before. To speed things up a little bit here, Kamigawa has visual language to it. And Tatiana mentioned this, it's the neon pinks. In a single sentence, you can explain the entire Magic Kamigawa block with one image. It is Japan, it is a mix of old and new, it is magical, and there are common folk that interact with both. It is not just the rich, it is common folk that are interacting with both pieces in one image. You show this in a preview panel, people immediately know what you're talking about. You say Neon Genesis, and everyone's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Right away. That quick. That's what Ryan was able to do with the simple, well, let's, draw us cards. That is phenomenally difficult. In Magic's history, if you ever see an image of a card that represents the entire set or block, it's one of the best artworks. Bar none. As the second example. So Mardu Heartpiercer is Tarkir. It's Tarkir.
I wanted, this was my number one, but I let Mike go.
He did. I invited him and he let me have it.
Yeah.
He let me have it.
Yeah.
So the Tarkir set is more than Mongolia, right? That's the whole piece. It's the Ottoman Empire, which is actually quite wide-ranging, that allows for the Sultai. It allows for the Jeska, your folks. And this image shows it. It's right away. Okay, person on horse, magical, there's some armor, scale, I don't understand, there's a step. I get it right away. Is the card good? It's okay and limited, I guess. Some people that played it, they're like, yeah, I use that card. But long term, a museum puts this in to say this represents Magic of a wide-ranging time of 3 sets, and people immediately grok what it is. This is not chainmail bikini dragon 1985 on the side of a van. This is, oh, you can put this in a museum next to real Ottoman art, and then you get a curator that gets to talk about old and new, contemporary art into historical research. That's what museums want. They want to say, how is it more than the game? Can it stand on its own? Yeah, it can. Also, one of the hardest things to paint, and I learned this as an art director, is one person talking to another person, and the second person is on a horse. Horses by themselves are one of the hardest things to paint. That is the art test. If you give any student it, or any professional, if they can achieve that, they are immediately at that level. It is shockingly hard, especially with this angle. Beautiful piece. Carl Kapinski.
Carl.
Hope he's doing well. Exalted Tyler Jacobson. We didn't talk on people outside of us what they have considered good. This won the Gold Award in the Spectrum Art Annual. So if you've ever been to a comic book store and look for the art books, you'll see this thing called Spectrum. And what artists do is they submit to this, costs a little bit of money. Wizards pays for a set amount of artworks to be sent in every year on behalf of their artists. And they're doing more and more every year. It's great. And to get a signifier in there is a mark of quality. No different than someone getting their first Magic card commission and now they get to say they're a Magic artist. To say, I won an award in Spectrum is then another resume piece. There's always another level, right? This won the Gold Award that year for so many reasons. Light source. Light source. So if you've been to museums and seen the cloth over faces carved in, and you're like, I don't know how they did that. In painting, it's just as hard. It's just as hard to show that. And this is on an angel that I guess is pretty good. I mean, it's played in a few formats, but this isn't in every character deck anymore. It's not even in the main set that came out from the ball. By having pieces that finally won awards, Magic hadn't until the Chesley Award for Sarah Angel from our boy Donnie Cola. In 1999 was the first time. There's been a drought since then. This one won, and now consistently every Chesley, which is an art award for the Worldcon sci-fi convention, as well as Spectrum, Magic is always in the running. Like this set to say, no, we're actually quite good, please stop overlooking us. And Tyler Jacobson also then represents as the center of the bullseye. So when you see Magic today, when you say what, you see a bunch of images in the artist here and say, what is the average Magic card look like? When someone's like, oh yeah, that's Magic, I can tell it from a distance. That center bullseye is Tyler Jacobson. You just know, you're like, oh yeah, that's Magic, that isn't Hearthstone, that isn't Riot, that's Magic, I get that. Magic has now expanded that bullseye, Secret Lair. Other folks that are doing, like Dominic Mayer, doing Wild Styles, and now that pie gets bigger. But that center bullseye starts with this. Yes, there were examples before, totally agree. But this set the standard to say, you now need to achieve this. Please do. Had to put it in. Had to put it in. Cartographer, Donato Giancola. I would argue the first great work. Unequivocal. Came out immediately and everyone's like, yeah, that's good. It's good. Immediately, that's good. Okay, that seems hard, drawing maps. That's weird. If you look close, his name is in the map, which is ridiculous, in the little atlas piece. Right here. Wild. Wild. You can look it up online. It's on the Googles. It's just a lady with maps. That's all the commission is. It has now become the de facto image of this. It's actually a reprint. It's the second time we've had it. First came out in Exodus. But everyone assumes this is the only one. It's that good. When you ask art directors, what's the best magic art of all time? They argue with you and then, oh, there's a couple good ones. But often this comes up as an easy way for you to like walk away, like leave me alone. And they're like, oh, it's just cartographer, because they just know, and it has now built its own mythos of, yeah, that's just one of the best, all the time. It's hard to argue against a Mona Lisa or a Great Wave off Konagawa for an Obasai to say, is that the best art in the world? Well, it's just different, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this is always in the mix. Always in the mix. If you ever see a top 5 artworks online, article, video, and this is not included, yell at them in the comments and you can tell them I just told you. Please do, because they are wrong. So he got to redo this piece, and I have the piece in the top left. Lovely work. The last piece is where it stands at the time. So Magic as of late has really branched out to say, I'd like for you to draw an Asian female in this work. Art descriptions have gotten longer. People complain about that because there's too many details. You've seen with Karlov Manor where they have the puzzle things that they have to put in and the extra spaces to put the highlighted things in the foil. That's hard to do. It can make art stiff. It can make art less imaginative because you're forced into a narrow angle. Donato opted in and said, I want to have a Latina woman working in maps, whereas cartography was generally old white dude, old world. And he's like, I think this is correct. I want to flip that assumption. The default being white guy with maps, I am going to change that myself in 2002. Way before Magic was working on this. Way before it was intentionality to say, we should probably work on that a little bit more. He just did it. And now every time it shows up, people are like, God, we should fit this in a deck. The card's not good, but the art is so amazing. And I am told it's played in one format from Travis Norman, apparently. Yes. Which is phenomenal. My last piece is surgical. And we don't love to reuse pieces here, but I have a story about why this is.
You have pretty good taste, Mike.
I have decent taste, Mr. Tatiana. And it's that when this came out, Steve Belladin brought it to Spectrum Live. Spectrum Live was the book, and then they did a con. It was in Kansas City. And he had it on his wall, and it said NFS, not for sale. Magic artists don't generally keep works right out of the gate. You know, they might have a collector call them. They might have somebody get a hold of them. Steve knew immediately. Immediately. As soon as he started painting this, he said, oh yeah, this means something. There's something here that I struck, and this will outlive me. He knew. People should probably interview on that for any content creators in the crowd. And there's one museum that now wants it, bad. He won't sell it yet either, he doesn't want to do that. But this will be the piece that you put in there. Like when you start a collection at a museum, when they put in a permanent collection, there's usually 5 pieces, 6 pieces. This is one that will be needed to have that first Magic art exhibition at a major museum, on tour. Like I've done exhibitions at Magic Cons, and those are great, but they're not up for 3 months. That's their work. Steve has this ability with this work. So there are some other pieces that I didn't know, and I had to talk to Steve about this. So yeah, it represents the card. Sure, it removes the things, showing representative of there. Yeah, the hex plates are there, which is very World Guide-y. Even the moon that's coming in there, he's referencing Magic's own symbology of the 5th sun. The 5th sun that come out, the green sun, he put that intentional of the green to harken back to players that know this, and he planned on Were this ever to become a full art, no text, it gains additional meaning. So not only a meta-analysis of what this shows, but how this impacts storyline for the future Vorthos people, that he expected this to happen. Magic artists don't plan that far ahead.
This was about the time that they were just starting to do Texas.
They had some pieces.
But
They used to have F&M
what it
rewards.
was now.
They had some F&M rewards in the 2000s, but not something that ties to story, that you get a story reveal for a card frame change that an artist thinks up of. That's next level. That's a label this long that we have to put in to explain this is why it's great, it's pretty, shines good, feels heavy, I feel sad here, all of the great things, and then you get into the line is great, and then into he thought about context into Magic the game in the future. And that has yet to be done again. Of knowing about reprints, knowing about that aspect. And Steve just shrugs and says, well, yeah, that's just what I did. And that humility also then brings on that mythos for the future. So, a couple little details here that we had to show in. Darkest Darks, it's actually a dark blue, which is kind of fun.
Is that oil?
Little bit of oil shot in there, the glistening oil. So we are at time. I'm getting hollered at over here already. It's all good. We'll be able to stick around for a little bit, but they are going to kick us out. Thank you everybody for coming. We do hope to get this online as well. Thank you.